Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Strong Communities Committee meeting on the 17th of June. We appear to have lost our sunshine this morning, but hopefully it'll come back and we can all enjoy the lovely weather once again. I hope you've taken advantage of the last few days when the weather's been wonderful. Thank you for joining us, and we have the agenda. The first item on the agenda is to note the appointment of the chair as myself. So thank you for that. The second item is to appoint a vice chair. Do we have nominations, please, for a vice chairman?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Anne Webb, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Trahan. Much appreciated. Do we have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Councillor Christopher Edwards, thank you very much. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? No, okay. So can I have indication of your acceptance, members, please, if you're happy to. We haven't got a raised hand facility. If anybody's not happy, perhaps they could just mention. I would say nothing has come forward other than yes, thank you. So congratulations, Councillor Webb. I hope you're prepared to accept this nomination and carry on as Vice Chair.
Thank you, members. Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. Apologies for absence. Councillor Clark is going to be joining us a little later, hopefully. Do we have any other apologies?
We haven't received any, Chair.
That was Robert. Sorry, a little bit faint.
Oh, sorry, no, we haven't received any other formally.
No other apologies. Okay, thank you very much. Just Councillor Clark going to be a little bit later. And Councillor Smith is dropping in and out. I think she is with us. She was with us earlier, but her connection isn't terribly good this morning. I'm happy to take declarations of interest now or as and when as we proceed.
As and when, Chair.
Thank you. Public open forum. We haven't had any notice of anybody wishing to join us other than somebody indicated late last night. So those questions are being looked at by our officers currently, and we will all get some feedback on those. An arrangement was made for the person who contacted us last night to either attend a future session or full council. So that is something, unfortunately, it was a little bit too late in the day to organise for this meeting, but we do hope people will take advantage of this public open forum on future occasions. Climate change is the first item on the agenda, and I'm going to ask our officers, Matthew Gatehouse and Hazel Clatsworthy, to present their report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members of the committee and those watching on the live stream. I'm Matthew Gatehouse, Head of Policy at Monmouthshire County Council, and I have the policy lead for our work on climate and decarbonisation. I'm joined by my colleague Hazel Clatworthy. I'm going to begin by introducing the report, but Hazel, do you just want to introduce yourself first before we get into the detail?
Sorry, could I interrupt a moment? It's very remiss of me. I didn't mention that the Cabinet members also joined us this morning. Councillor Pratt, welcome, Councillor Pratt. And if I could also ask members to turn the microphones and the cameras off while the presentation is taking place. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Hazel Clatworthy and I'm the Sustainability Policy Officer. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, so just a bit of context for members, and I'll sort of talk a little bit about the work that's underway at the moment. So the report before you today is an opportunity to scrutinise the council's commitment to reduce its carbon emission, and you recall that the declaration of a climate emergency was made by full council in May 2019. From memory, I think that went through council unanimously. Officers were then tasked with developing a strategy and an action plan, which was then approved by council in October of that year. A member-led working group was established, and that is chaired by the Cabinet member, Councillor Jane Pratt, with representatives of all the political groups, as well as officers who have carbon reduction within part of their sort of work portfolios, and also representatives of the community, I think, which is really important. We know this is a topic of genuine interest to many within our communities, and the perspective of those is very valuable on that working group. So the report before you today gives you the opportunity to look in a little bit more detail and ask some questions, again, progress of some of the things in the action plan. What you will see within the report are just if I just sort of give you a bit of a sort of highlight of the activity. You'll see a para 3.4. We've put a couple of pie charts there to just give you a sense of the activities which are making good progress, those which are making lesser progress, and some where no progress has been made in a conventional sort of traffic light system. It is, we have to be upfront and say, over the course of the last sort of 12 to 15 months, dealing with the pandemic has caused a bit of a disruption in terms of some of these activities, as our resources have needed to be diverted away from some of the things we were working on in order to deal with the pandemic. At the same time, if you were to look at it, some of the actions probably look slightly better than they would otherwise have done because of the pandemic. An example probably being something like business miles, which have reduced significantly as we've held more meetings online as we are today, and that's some of the activity that we hope would continue. Probably just to give a couple more sort of points of overview, and then I'll let Hazel come in and run through a little bit more of the detail in terms of progress. Our sense is, as officers, that the broad direction within the climate strategy that was approved by Council, the strategic direction and objectives remain about right. However, a report is coming before Council as well next week, and that will give the Cabinet member the opportunity to give full Council an update on progress. And also to task officers with looking again at the action plan, identifying areas where we need to accelerate progress, where new activities may be required to come in, but also to put a bit more detail on this. When we produced the action plan, we've ranked things in terms of contribution to emissions as high, medium or low, and similarly in terms of the financial cost of implementing those actions. One of the things that we know we need to do is be more precise in terms of some of that, so that we can understand the relative trade-offs and benefits of the different activities we can undertake, because we have to be realistic that we won't be able to do absolutely everything. One of the things we want to do is take a carbon budget approach and understand how much we need to reduce our emissions by year on year to ensure that the council has the best chance of hitting its objective of achieving zero emissions, net zero by 2030. Just one final point before I pass on to Hazel. I think this is quite significant. Just a reminder that the action plan is divided into 3 different areas. There are those things which we can deliver directly as a council, and that is the stated policy commitment to decarbonise our operations. There are then activities which we can do which will help decarbonise the county of Monmouthshire that are not necessarily within our direct control. That might be things like better EV charging networks, which encourage more people to buy and operate electric vehicles. And then thirdly, there are those sort of things we can do, or rather we can all do as individuals, and which all residents of Monmouthshire can do to make a difference. So we can think of the actions in those sort of 3 different areas. So probably what I will do now, Chair, if you're comfortable with that, is pass over to Hazel, who will run through some of the the details in the action plan. And once Hazel has made that contribution, we with your permission, Chair, open it up to questions from the committee.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairman. I've arrived now.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Thank you, Hazel.
Morning, everybody. Morning, Chair. Thanks for having us here this morning. So Matt's given you the kind of background to, you know, the kind of where the plan has come from. It's a big plan. There's 66 actions in it. So you can see in Appendix 1 a kind of detailed breakdown of each individual action, what officers are dealing with it, where we're up to as at about the end of May, and whether we feel that we're making good progress or not. So I don't plan to go through it line by line because that would take quite a while, but I just thought it might be helpful to pick out some of the areas where we're making progress, and there's certainly some of the areas that we perhaps get asked more questions about and that kind of thing. But if there's anything specific in the action plan that you'd like to ask about, please do feel free. So my role is kind of pulling together really where we're at in the action plan from across numerous different officers. Obviously, climate change is a cross-cutting priority for the council. It doesn't sit with any one department, and everyone in the council has got things they can do to contribute to reducing our carbon emissions overall. So I've put in the report in paragraph 3.6 just a couple of examples just to give a flavour of some of the things that are happening. We've purchased 7 electric vehicles for use by different council teams, and we've also got an electric 17-seater minibus on order and 2 electric road sweepers. As a proportion of our whole fleet, that's at the moment quite small, but we have done a comprehensive fleet review of all the vehicles we've got and what we would like to be able to do. And there's quite a few limiting factors. You know, people might ask, why can we not just convert everything to EV? But the fact of the matter is a lot of our depots physically don't have the space for the charging facilities or the grid capacity. A lot of what we do around renewables and electric vehicle charging and that kind of thing is quite constrained by the national grid and the capacity of the national grid. But we've done those studies, so we know what we want to be able to do. So as and when vehicles come up for renewal, we're able to look at what the options are. I know Debbie Jackson, who's our fleet manager, has done a lot of work at trialling different electric refuse vehicles, road sweepers. She's really up there on keeping up with the technology and what's available. But there are some things, like for example, we use 70-seater coaches for the school bus runs. There isn't a kind of electric 70-seater coach equivalent on the market at the moment. So there's a variety of different reasons that kind of are slowing the rollout of electric vehicles. But whenever there's opportunities, we are looking at that. And in the longer term, you know, we're looking at having a new, potentially a new depot somewhere in the south of the county. So a key factor in that will be making sure that there is the infrastructure there to be able to achieve our aspirations around electric vehicles. You might have seen some of the publicity that's been out about the libraries of things that are about to launch in 4 towns across the county, where people can borrow items rather than buy them. So we've got things like gardening equipment, gazebos, PA systems, all sorts of stuff, camping equipment that people will be able to borrow, and we hope that people will donate as well. We've got really keen and proactive community groups we're partnering with on that. And we've got repair cafes that are just a couple of them that were on hold over COVID are starting up again. Abergavenny's meeting this weekend, and we're having an event at the end of June for anyone who wants to find out what a repair cafe involves, if they'd like to do more in their community on that. The reuse shops, the Lamfoist one is going great guns, and we've just opened a new one down in 5 Lanes in Caerwent, which is brilliant. There's been lots you'll have seen around active travel, particularly over the kind of COVID period, changing the layout in towns to make it easier for people to be able to walk and cycle and still social distance. and Sue Hughes and Paul Sullivan are the active travel team, and they're doing really well at levering in Welsh Government funding to be able to put in more cycle routes or walking and cycling routes in our towns to enable people. It's not so much for the kind of tourists, you know, long distance travellers, but it's more getting people to be able to day use walking and cycling as a means of travel to go shopping or to school, that kind of thing. Some of you on this call, I know, in this committee undertook the carbon literacy training earlier this year. We had 113 people altogether from the council and from Public Service Board partners who work in Monmouthshire took the training, and we're looking to get more funding to be able to roll that out more widely in our communities. I know it's really important that we have kind of community on board. The council can't reduce carbon emissions across the county as a whole on our own. The public sector are only responsible for, I think it's 1% of Wales's emissions. So it's really important we have other people on board. So we're looking for funding to be able to do carbon literacy training, starting with our town and community councils and village hall committees, because obviously they've got assets, they've got buildings and playing fields and things like that. So it would be really good to get them on board. And also we're hoping to do some train-the-trainer training. So we've got some staff in-house who can deliver that training ourselves to other officers and members and wider in the community as well. They estimate that when a person does carbon literacy training, that they save between 5 and 15% of the carbon emissions they're responsible for following the training. So if we can roll that out more widely, that will be a really, really good achievement. Street lights, we've got 9,500 something or 9,600 something that have already been converted to LEDs, and we've only got 500 left to go. So we're nearly there on rolling out our LED conversion to the street lighting. As Matt said, our business mileage has plummeted as a result of working from home and using Teams, and that's likely to carry on going forwards. I can't see probably a time where everyone is always back in the office every day like we were before, and now we've proven that the technology works and that we're able to carry out a lot more meetings remotely, and that's definitely likely to continue. And another thing that you'll have seen, you know, the way we manage grasslands has changed dramatically, and a lot of that actually was driven by COVID and not being able to go out, and that the grounds maintenance teams being put on the refuse trucks and things. But now we've recognised, and the public are recognising how amazing our green spaces are when we let them grow, and the wildflowers. So we've done a lot around reducing the mowing, and we've purchased special equipment to cut and collect the mowings when we do, which is much better than for allowing the wildflowers to thrive. So lots going on. You know, there's heaps more I could talk about, but you know, I'll leave it there for now. Just to reiterate, Matt mentioned we're looking to refresh kind of update our action plan. It's the strategy we adopted 2 years ago. As I say, as Matt said, still holds, but the action plan is a kind of constantly evolving and being a refreshed sort of document. So as and when new technologies come on board, or we hear about new projects, or there are funding opportunities to explore, we take those and we're able to adapt the action plan and add new things in. And we'll be looking, as Matt said, at getting better at being able to quantify what the carbon savings are. The challenge is, with so many actions, we know they're all good things to do. We know that they will all reduce carbon, but we don't necessarily know which ones will produce the most carbon. And that's what we want to understand a bit better over the next few months, so that we can really make sure that our action is being focused on the areas where it can have most effect. So I'll leave it there, I think, and open it up if anyone would like to ask Matt or myself any questions. Please do.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that presentation. Oh, well, somebody's got the microphone on. Could I ask you to turn your microphones off, please? Thank you. Right. We have a raised hand facility in the chat bar for members who would like to ask questions. So just to make sure I point you in the right direction, because we do have different types of facilities on these Teams meetings to ask questions, to raise hands. So it's actually in the chat bar for this meeting. it's a full and comprehensive report. It's much appreciated. All the detail you put into it. This is whole authority. To sum it up in a document is very difficult. So we have got some questions, but obviously we recognise that this is rapidly changing, and you have done a tremendous amount of work during the last couple of years, and especially during the pandemic, to continue to make progress with all of these areas. But our members do have some questions, and I'm going to open it now to our members. So Councillor Treharne, you're first on the list.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Matt and Hazel, for the report. As the Chair has said, it is comprehensive and quite detailed. I have a couple of questions, and they're quite varied, so please bear with me. The two pie charts that are in the report, just for clarification, the progress on actions made 2021, there are no projects, if you like, that are not yet started. It's just that its colour scheme is similar to the white background, so I just want that clarified, please. In the progress traffic light report, I'm just looking for it now. About the fit bike carriers to buses to encourage cycling. No progress. Bus layout is incompatible with bike carriers. What is on the table with in regards to progressing that forward and making the buses compatible for bike carriers? Because I've seen quite often people with their bikes inside the bus, and whilst when there's room in the bus for that, that's great. But sometimes when the bus is full, it's not always practical. So what is on the table for that? And with the mowing of the grassed green areas, last week the grounds maintenance team were about in Kingsfee, where I live, to mow the green open grassed areas. They cut the majority of the grassed areas that was in front of houses, but the bigger grass areas that where the children and all play, they left. And I've had residents asking me why they haven't cut those areas, and they're saying it looks a little bit overgrown and a little bit messy. I got one resident who's got a dog who's allergic to long grass, and he usually lets his dog have a bit of a run on this little area of grassed area, but because the grass is so long, he's allergic to it. So my question on that is, who decides that the little lawn areas in front of properties are to be cut, but the bigger, larger areas where kids play football or whatever are left? It seems, I understand the principles behind it, but it just seems to be half-hearted, if you like, and a lot of residents don't appreciate nature isn't neat and biodiversity and getting wildlife back. They think it's untidy and overgrown. I'll stop there for the moment because I'm sure I've got more and I've gone on for too long. So thank you. You're on mute, Sheik.
Yeah, you're on
Sorry.
mute, Councillor.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you if you'd like to ask respond to questions individually, or should we take a couple of members' questions? And you just let me know when you're ready to answer.
Shall I take the couple that Councillor Treharne started with to talk about? So the bike racks one, okay. First of all, I'm not an expert on the bikes and the buses, but I think there's two parts of the issue here. So firstly, a lot of the buses that run in the county run by contractors. So we have less influence then over what can be done. But in terms of the buses that we do run, I think my understanding of it is that where the bike racks would need to go is where the kind of area to access our the engine compartment would be. So it's not feasible because of the type of buses that we have to have the bike racks on them, just simply because of the configuration of the types of buses that we've got. So what I would say is that as and when we're looking at renewing buses, because obviously, you know, we have them for a certain number of years. We're not replacing them all the time. I don't know off the top of my head how long we keep buses for, but as and when we would be looking to renew buses, then that would be something that we would pick up and explore at that time to look at what kind of buses we're getting and whether it's compatible with that. So that's as much as of an answer I think that I can give on that one. In terms of the mowing, so you know, perhaps it would be helpful perhaps if you could email me the details of the particular areas and I can pass them on to Nigel Leeworthy and his team who do the mowing. A couple of things. So I know that the council are mowing all the playing fields, you know, the kind of sports pitches and the playing fields, and keeping those mown. The other areas, they've been letting the wildflowers grow, and sometimes they've been mowing kind of paths around them and pass through them, so that people have still got areas they can walk without getting, you know, wet grass all over their legs and whatever, but allowing the biodiversity and the pollinators to seed in between times. And then in some of the areas that you talk about, the residential areas in front of people's houses, and that's why I'd be interested to know kind of, are there particular places, because sometimes it's not always the council who's responsible for all of the areas. Perhaps if it belongs to a housing association, sometimes they will have perhaps different policies on mowing to what the council will have, or sometimes, because we sometimes get questions about school grounds mowing, for example, and the schools, you know, the schools are in charge of their own grounds and how they manage them. So sometimes they might be asking the council team to mow their area, and that might not necessarily be what our own kind of policy would be, but we're contracted, you know, more as a contractor to do that. Yeah, if you want to send through the details of the particular areas, I can get a response from that on those particular areas from Nigel Leeworthy, who manages the grounds maintenance team. Yeah. So we're always happy to, and it's a tricky one, isn't it, getting balance, because I know we've had loads of compliments on the wonderful wildflowers that people have been able to see, and the increase in the birds and the bees and the pollinators and things. But it's balancing that as well with those who want kind of, you know, the municipal green space to be able to walk, and so it's getting that balance right. So perhaps we can explore outside the meeting the specific details of those cases, and we can get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. If I could just come back, there are a few areas in front of properties that the council don't cut, but I suppose the issue is if they hear that the mowers are on the estate, and then outside their window they got a big grassed area where kids play and whatever, and that isn't cut, then they're coming to me saying, well, they were here mowing, why haven't they mowed the grass? So I'll get some images off and sent to you about that. And the only thing you didn't come back to me was the clarification on the pie charts about is all actions have been started, so there's none that haven't been started, because the colours are a bit conflicting.
Yeah, sorry. So there was a few actions that back in June hadn't actually started. So as an example, there was a couple of schools related projects that hadn't been able to start because of lockdown. And also one of the first actions in the action plan is about making sure that new builds are built to be zero carbon. And at that point, we had no kind of new builds happening at that point. But now that discussions are underway now about the new King Henry VIII school and the building there, that's moved now to green, because those conversations are now happening with the contractors, and we're making sure that we build sustainability and net zero into the specification for that. So those were a couple of the examples of things that hadn't started, but they are now underway.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much.
Lovely, thank you for the questions, Jamie, and your response, Hazel. I'm just thinking as we're talking about the open spaces and the mowing, and the difference between the areas that are mowed and not. I mean, we all see it, and we all understand what's happening and how we're trying to encourage the bees, but and biodiversity. But I'm just wondering if we have had communications about this in the past. If it's worth currently at the moment with all everything's going so quickly, is it worth putting out some sort of an update for residents and members? Just a quick press release about how effective it's been, and just to reassure people that it is being monitored. Different things to happen in different places, but we are aware, and obviously it's relatively new in some places not to just go in and cut all the grass, so people have just a little bit of a further understanding. That's just a suggestion. It's all about communication, I think, and we're trying to work it out, and your answers are very helpful. The differences between the schools, for example, and the housing associations, and what we do on our verges. If we could have a little bit of information out there, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I will speak to colleagues about perhaps getting out another. I know press releases did go out a little bit earlier in the year, and we've done quite a lot with putting up signage to explain what we're doing, and explaining about No Mow May and things like that. But I know what you mean. In the last few weeks since we've had the sunny weather, everything has just shot up, so it might be worth just reiterating that. So I will follow that up.
Lovely, thank you very much. Right, our next member who wishes to ask some questions is Councillor Edwards. Christopher Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thanks to Matt and Hazel for taking us through the progress so far. I have 3 questions. They're fairly similar to what's been asked so far, but referring to the Climate Emergency Action Plan, first of all. I mean, it's wonderful that there's been plenty of progress over this last year, especially as the year has been very difficult, and that's in the action that the council is taking. But I was just wondering whether there are any major areas of concern in these actions where some progress is being made. In other words, the amber areas in the action plan, or the ones marked in yellow. It mentions amber, but it does actually come up as the colour yellow. That's my first question. My second one is in relation to the grass verges. I was just wondering whether you can give some kind of update that since the end of No Mow May, where is the council in relation to sort of catching up with the grass cutting? And I would like to say as well, thanks to John and Nigel Leeworthy and team for providing the updates. I know that they're very quick in responding to me and my many emails on the subject. Shall I leave you with those 2 for now, and I'll come back with my 3rd question afterwards?
I think it'd be a good idea. I don't know about you, Hazel. Should we have the 3rd question and then you can cover them all?
Yeah, that's fine.
My 3rd question is that I can see that air pollution is on the agenda for a future meeting of this committee, which is obviously very important for residents, especially in Chepstow, where pollution is the greatest in Monmouthshire. As today is Clean Air Day in the UK. Now, I completely appreciate that Clean Air Day is relatively new. I think it's only about, say, it's an annual event that's only 4 years old. I was wondering whether the council plays an active role in that campaign. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Hazel. If you're happy to take those, or Matt.
Yeah, thanks very much for the questions, Councillor Edwards, and probably we'll just sort of pick these up as a bit of a mixture between myself and Hazel. Yeah, I think it's a really good point in terms of the amber. Clearly, as we mentioned in the introduction, not all of these things have progressed as quickly as we would like, or as quickly as we might necessarily need in order to reach net zero by 2030. If I just sort of highlight one of the examples in there, which is amber, to give you a bit of a flavour, it's the commitment to move the council's pension fund away from carbon intensive industries. Members may recall that this took place following a motion that from memory, I believe was brought forward by Councillor Grocott some time back. Since then, the council pension fund has begun to divest from fossil fuel companies significantly, and has also begun to put a larger proportion of its investments into a zero carbon tracker. So investing more positively in companies that are sort of proactively looking to reduce carbon from their activities, such as green energy firms. That's something which is marked as amber in the action plan. Now, a significant amount of progress has been taken. I don't have the figures in front of me, but we're talking about shifting in tens of millions of pounds worth of investments. But of course, with something like that, you can't take action overnight and immediately sort of ditch a whole load of stocks. It has to be part of a managed program of disinvestment and reinvestment. So that's one of the areas that's marked as yellow. We're not there yet. Still more work needs to be done, but that's in the hands of fund managers who've taken a clear steer from council in terms of the sorts of things you want to invest in and remove investment from. There are some other activities in there that have been that are probably trailing behind where we want them to be. For example, the installation of photovoltaic canopies and EV charging at car parks such as County Hall. Originally, members will recall 2 months ago, or sorry, going back probably 18 months ago, pre-pandemic, we were looking to expand the car park at County Hall in Usk because we consolidated more of our staff onto that site. As part of that proposal, there were plans to install photovoltaic canopies within the expanded area. Clearly, with more people working from home and the way in which we've embraced agile working, the work on expanding that car park has been paused because it may be simply we don't have the same numbers of people longer term travelling into the site, and therefore the plans that had been developed for canopies need to be reassessed in light of new travel patterns and journeys to work. So those are sort of a couple of examples of the areas where perhaps progress hasn't been as quick as we would like, or I should say as quick as we would need. I think the second question, Councillor Edwards, was on mowing. So that's an area where Hazel knows a lot more of the detail than I do. So Hazel, are you able to come back in on that one?
Yeah, that's fine. You'll appreciate that I'm a jack of all trades and master of none, in that, I dabble in many things, but, don't necessarily know every detail about everything. But I just messaged a colleague in the team who works on the No Mow May campaign, and they've informed me that for all those areas that weren't cut during May, they're now we're resuming mowing, and we're prioritising the verges, junctions and sports pitches first and foremost. But there is a lot to catch up with, so people may have to be patient. But also the new cut and collect machine that we're using, which is really, really valuable because it's it collects the mowings, even the kind of longer mowings. So if you cut the grass and you just leave it all on the field, particularly if it's longer, it results in making the field more fertile, which is not good for the wildflowers. Wildflowers actually thrive in fairly infertile soil. So taking up the cuttings is really important, but that machine is slower than if the normal mowers were just whizzing along and spraying the cuttings behind them. So that is slightly slowing things down. The other area that you talked about was Clean Air Day and air pollution stuff. So one of the actions, to give an example of what we've been doing in the action plan, is around our anti-idling campaign. So we have worked with schools and had a competition to get schools to design posters that we can make up into metal signs that are going to go around the schools, encouraging people to switch off their engines and not leave their engines idling, because that's, as well as being bad for air quality in terms of the environment and the pollution that it produces, it's also got really significant impacts in terms of health, particularly young children's health, who will be breathing in the pollution and the fumes. So that's an example of one of the kind of amber ones that kind of got put on hold because we wanted to have the kind of publicity and stuff when the schools were open, of putting the signs up and putting them around the schools and other locations as well, where we know idling is a problem, perhaps in leisure centres and places like that. So that's one example of a project that we've been working on, particularly around that. But I also know that my colleagues in transport and environmental health, you mentioned Chepstow, we have an air quality management zone in Chepstow and one in Usk. And there's a group in Chepstow of officers from us and from Gloucestershire and members of the community as well who meet regularly to talk about proposals there. I work closely with the transition town groups across the town, and I know Transition Chepstow are working really hard on transport issues down in Chepstow and are really keen to develop a kind of transport plan for the town, working with us and with other partners to reduce the air quality issues there. So that's a couple of the examples. Clean Air Day, with hindsight, we should have done a big publicity splurge today, but I was a bit late on the game. But I think we've got some comms, some tweets and social media stuff going out today, linking the anti-idling campaign with the Clean Air Day. So that's going out on social media today. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Hazel. You're happy afterwards?
I am, thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. Right, Councillor Guppy, Linda Guppy, would you like to ask your questions?
Hi, good morning, everybody, and thanks for this report. It's absolutely brilliant. You know, we're making progress. Some of it might be a bit slow, but all progress is good. I've got quite a few areas, really. As we've been talking about the grass cutting, No Mow May, absolutely fabulous. Going in the field, seeing flowers that I never even knew that they were in the field, seeing all the clover in the field rather than it be cut down, absolutely fabulous. People have got to get used to that these grass verges are allowed to be ragged looking. One thing, I've just come back from Devon and Cornwall and Dartmoor. Can we try and sort out our country lanes and our minor B roads? Because wherever I went in Cornwall and Devon, the roads, the side roads were full of wildflowers. Daisies, foxgloves, Canterbury bells, absolutely stunning. I come back here, Monmouthshire is just full of grass, which is good, but can we make our verges or get the farmers to have more flowers, and then people will accept more of a ragged area? Even our main roads, they're just full of grass. There are some more daisies coming in, but I think we can really sort of you know, embrace this No Mow May, and people will get used to it. Lovely to see some of the playing fields just have areas of cut so people can walk if they're not playing football. And I think it's up to us as local councillors that if there's more space needed for sort of kicking balls around, then let's let the officers aware of this, make aware of this, and, you know, ask for a little bit more mowing. I've seen the grass cutting and the new machines, and they're trying their best to put the grass alongside the areas, which is absolutely brilliant. And I know it gets time, and I know people are so impatient because they want nice, neat grass cut verges. Well, I want to see more flowers, and please can you pass on thanks to Nigel and his team and whoever thought about No Mow May. Absolutely fabulous. We want more of it, please. Right, we're going on to you know, more walking and more cycling. Well, prior to me even being a community councillor, which is over 20 years, I requested in the Sevenside area, please can we have a cycle path? That has not made progress. and it's all about funding. There's a new housing development, you know, and we get a report a couple of months ago, oh, let's upgrade the path between the old railway path between Caldecott and Caerwent. Well, it's about time now the cycle path between Roggett and Undy is put in place. We have had homeworking. There is now a reduction in people using the trains at Severn Tunnel Junction. All you need to do is go down there and see the lack of cars in that car park. We need to, we've got an ideal opportunity now for people who do need it to cycle, and also the youngsters are walking. How many times do we have to tell officers this is a dangerous road, we need to sort it out? I don't know, somebody get it on the priority list, please. It is on our agenda, it's on our highways agenda, but whoever's putting it on the bottom of the list needs to look at it again and turn the list upside down, please. The other thing within our policy, which is not something that we can do, but I think we need to be getting invested in, is we are losing our investment in wind turbines. Now, I know some of the cabinet members do not want wind turbines, so it's not brought forward, but we are losing out as an authority for the gains for the community and the environment by not having wind turbines. Newport, on the edge of South Monmouthshire, is putting up wind turbines. Everybody moans about the visual impact, but it's happening to Monmouthshire because we have not taken that policy through. If we had had the 2 wind turbines that planning had agreed, and then they soon whipped it off the list because the licence had expired, then there wouldn't have been 2 more wind turbines put in from Newport, and Monmouthshire would have gained. They would have gained financially, they would have gained on better road connections, and possibly more money for cycle paths that could have built that cycle path between Roggett and Undy. We are losing out and we need to get it back on the agenda, please. That may not be within this policy, but it needs to be on the wider policy. And I just thank you for doing all what you're doing, and I think there are some areas we can definitely move forward, and celebrate what we're doing. But I'm not quite sure the response to sort of more wildflower areas, flowers in our areas, but I certainly, there was a marked from 2 counties not particularly far away from us to ours, lack of natural flowers, and let's go back to natural and rugged rather than pristine, highly gardened areas within our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Guppy. Right, who would like to answer those? Matthew Gaters, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and yeah, thank you, Councillor Guppy, for the questions. Appreciate the comments regarding No Mow May and the work that has been done there. Your point on in terms of wildflowers, absolutely. We don't own all of this land. It's not all of ours. You recall at times we have had programmes such as when the Eisteddfod was on to try and encourage people to buy and making sort of low-cost seeds available for people to encourage the planting of wildflowers. We do what we can on our land, but clearly not all of the land is within our control. But absolutely agree with the sentiment. I think when you drive around Monmouthshire and the feedback we get, and I would echo, is it looks absolutely wonderful where this is in place on verges. But recognise your point as well. Yes, more of it. As someone that sort of drives through and works in the county and spends a huge amount of time, I love seeing those meadows, and we know that they're hugely environmentally beneficial as well. In terms of the active travel point and the walking and cycling route, I know that you'll be aware, and members on this call will be aware, but just for the benefit of anyone watching on the live stream, we currently have a live active travel consultation. I don't know the details of every route which is currently proposed on there. We have invested heavily in active travel over the last 12 months. That's an area led by Officer Paul Sullivan and his colleague Susan Hughes, both of whom attend the climate working group chaired by Councillor Pratt to sort of update on progress. And what I would say, both as members and as members of the public that may be watching, have a look on the council's website at those active travel routes. Give us your feedback. What do you think about those routes? Are they what you expect to see? And continue to engage with our officers, because we are keen to hear from the public around what works, what's needed in terms of active travel. And we have been very successful recently at leveraging external funding for the development of cycle routes. So it's very important that we're able to engage with people to get feedback in terms of what's needed and the routes which are proposed. The point you make on about wind turbines, Councillor Guppy, I'm afraid I'm not aware of the detail on that one, so I can't offer you a more detailed response on that. But what I would say, one of the objectives within the climate strategy and action plan is on energy. As members will be aware, we run and operate a solar farm which has significant benefits both commercially and in terms of producing renewable energy. Broadly, in terms of energy, there are some challenges in terms of expanding our renewable offer, and those are linked into the capacity of the national grid. We're dependent on the power distribution companies in our area, Western Power, to have the capacity to enable us to connect up more renewable sources into the grid. At present, to give an example, there is insufficient capacity that is available to us to reconnect things like solar farms onto the grid. I'd have to check on the detail regarding the wind turbines, because I'm less certain on that position. But this is one of the things colleagues such as Deb Hill-Howells and Ian Hockham are grappling with at present, and we're exploring in conversations on that connectivity. What I would say is those issues are not unique to Monmouthshire. Myself and Deb Hill-Howells were talking to a council in the southeast of England a couple of days ago, and they are grappling with similar challenges to us in terms of national grid capacity and being able to connect up more renewable sources to that grid. So while recognising it's a challenge, it's something we need to work at, not just as a council, but as sort of Wales and UK as a whole, to sort of unblock some of those barriers to enable us to produce more renewables. But what I would say regarding the particular comments on wind turbines, if this is okay, I'll go in and have a chat to some colleagues that know more detail around that, and you know, if sort of give a written response back through the chair and to yourself, so that we can give an update in at the next meeting of the committee.
Thank you, Matthew, for that. It's an ideal opportunity. We're doing the LDP. It needs to be brought in, and it needs to be higher up on the agenda. Matthew, you're always knowledgeable of what's happening with the policies and things, but with regard to active travel and this cycle route that has been footpath that has been highlighted between Roggett and Undy, listen, all we get is, oh, we're looking at it, look at it. Somebody needs to get hold of this action and put words into action, because stop talking about it. I've had enough of people talking about it. I don't know what to do. Between everybody who's looking at it, nobody's taken the lead, and it's ridiculous now. But if you just see the less traffic that's happening in the area, you know, it means that it's going to be more beneficial, because people, you know, there are less cars going on that road there. There are less people using the train, but but then it makes it easier, because that is such a dangerous road. Matthew, I you know, challenge you to be in that area, not at school holidays, between 8:30 and 9 o'clock, or 4:30, and not on a Friday either, because there's less trains, less traffic at the end of the week, just to see how busy it can be and how treacherous. And you can't walk on the hedges, on the green path, because it's so uneven. It's not safe. You'll trip and fall, and children and adults are walking to it. There's a huge industrial estate that lots and lots of people walk. There's the Tesco's, there's Wilkinson's. There's such a lot of industry there, and a lot of people work there, and they would cycle, but it's too dangerous. So please, somebody grab hold of this policy, and there is a need, there's a been defined need, and get on and do it, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Guppy. Matthew Gators, I'm just wondering now if it's worth, Linda, if you could have a conversation, contact our cabinet member. She's on this call now, but she can obviously understand how strongly you feel about this. Perhaps you could pursue a conversation with her outside of this meeting. You know, I mean, it obviously is of great concern to you. It's of great concern to us. That could be a way forward.
Chair.
Yes, if you'd like to come in there now, Councillor Pratt, that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Guppy, and I totally agree with you. And I believe that we did apply for funding for this, and it was rejected by Welsh Government. It's certainly something that has been highlighted in the Burns report. And, you know, the Welsh Government are taking the Burns report very seriously. So, you know, we are certainly lobbying at every avenue to actually get this done. But, you know, we do need to have the finances to be able to action it. And I really hope that we can be successful at doing that. It was just a shame that the bid that was put forward was not successful with Welsh Government. But it is, I totally agree with you, there is a dire need for it, and we are behind the scenes doing everything we can to get this sorted out. But thank you for raising it again today.
Councillor Pratt, can I just say, perhaps you could go back and look how many times the bid has been turned down. There's a new housing estate. Where's the 106 money going for that? It could contribute, and which would be less of a grant. It needs to be looked at. Just go back. I think there's been at least three bids for it, and it's been turned down. So what else are they doing? Just looking at the bids and then waiting and waiting and waiting. Over 20 years we've waited. That we need a different action plan. There's a new housing estate and there's another housing estate on planning. We need, where is the 106 money that could be invested into it? There's a need. The whole area's requesting it.
Yeah. Can I just say, Councillor,
go ahead.
Chairman, can I just come in there? Make the point that active travel actually comes under Councillor Dimmock's portfolio. So Councillor Dimmock is a very obviously very local to your area, and I think, you know, whilst highways and my portfolio deliver the active travel schemes, it is actually a portfolio in its own right, because we put so much importance on that. And, you know, Councillor Dimmock has recently taken up that cabinet post, and I think, you know, you need to get together with her and with Susan Hughes, who's our officer, to really highlight this once again. But thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt, and thank you, Councillor Guppy. I'm going to suggest that we make it a recommendation of this committee that actually happens, that this is taken forward to the cabinet member, Lisa Dimmock, for active travel to look into this, as you requested, Councillor Guppy. Look at the history behind it, and look into the and obviously respond on the consultation as mentioned by Matthew Gatehouse. Put it in there as well. If we could all do that, anybody that's got first-hand knowledge to respond on that one. But we will definitely ask for it to be put in as a recommendation from this committee to be taken further, that this matter be looked at.
Thank you, Chair. Just for you, to know, to bring you up to speed as well. You know, the Transport Committee was supposed to take this forward, but there's not enough emphasis because they're looking a bit more about trains. So, you know, even though they'll, you know, as previously other officers have said, you know, there is another committee looking at this. I would like this committee to look at this because there's no progress being made. Thank you.
Yes, we'll make that recommendation. Thank you. Right, we'll move on now. I think all of your other questions were answered. Thank you very much, officers. So, Councillor Easton, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. And I won't leave it there where Councillor Guppy raised it. This particular road, and I'll talk about the grass cutting in a minute in relation to this particular road. This particular road, as Linda says, is extremely dangerous. There'll be many accidents on the road. One fatal just over a year ago. And at the moment, the road is totally unsafe to walk on. I totally support No Mow May, but I also believe that road safety should be brought into this as well, because that road now, with the grass going from the edges of the verges, is pushing people into the middle of into the centre of the road. As Councillor Guppy stated, and as Councillor Pratt has responded to, this has been going on for a long time. Councillor Lisa Dimmock will know fully well what we're talking about, and I believe that had we had a footpath along that road 8, 9, 10 years ago, and yes, it's been turned down and turned down and turned down and turned down, it would have been far safer than it is at the moment, and we could have encompassed the No Mow May. I'm trying to raise the two together. So whilst Councillor Guppy has raised a very strong point, I'm totally supporting her, and I believe this committee should take this on very seriously. In regards to 106 money for the development in Undy, I do believe there was none. There was none purely because they didn't need it for education. This is my understanding. And as Councillor Pratt says, the other sort of funding for the highways comes from another sort of pot. That particular development could have provided a lot of section 174, I think it is, for the roads money, which could have helped to move this forward. It's been turned down previously. It was turned down last time because it was part and parcel of the new M4 motorway around Newport. So it's there again now. It needs dealing with straight away. So that's my little rant on B4245, which I totally support Linda Guppy on. But regarding No Mow May.
Councillor Easton, I'll just read out for members, for the benefit of anybody watching on the live stream, a comment has been put in the chat bar by Councillor Pratt that she actually discussed this with Lord Burns when he visited MCC. Okay.
Yes, we did.
So your other questions?
Yeah, No Mow May. Totally support No Mow May, but I've had problems with my constituents who haven't understood, and that's not saying they're not stupid or anything, but within my ward I've got 3 regimes of grass cutting. One is a private company which has got private houses or private developments. They do their own grass cutting. They do it like a lawn. We've also got contracts with Monmouthshire Housing. And with Monmouthshire Housing, our contractors cut the grass completely. Now Monmouthshire itself, on its own grounds, didn't cut in May, and after May has cut, as Hazel has stated, left certain areas which the plants can grow. In the last week, 3 of our cabinet members have been, and a leader of council, have been inundated with an email from one of my constituents regarding our failure, as it was put to us, to not cut the grass properly. And on the weekend, a group of residents completely cut the grass afterwards. And I don't think that was supporting what we want to do, No Mow May. So yes, I support No Mow May. I do believe that we should look at the edges of roads and edges of junctions and not just not cut them in May. I think we should make sure they are safe at all times. But my other question really was to do with, I took a while to find it on the report, was hydrogen cars. Could we have an update on where we are and where we're going, what our expectations are with hydrogen cars? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I believe that would be Hazel.
Yeah, so well, I'm not the expert, but yeah, so as you know, we've been talking for quite a long time about piloting the Rasa River Simple hydrogen cars. 20 are going to be beta tested around the county. It has been a little bit frustrating, the kind of time scale that it's taken. We would have hoped to have had them by now, but we're shortly about to take delivery of the first one, which is going to be piloted by our registrar's service. So they're quite small vehicles. So in terms of council staff being able to use them, there's some services they wouldn't be suitable for because they're not like the size of a van, which a lot of our colleagues perhaps need a van to transport things around. But the registrars, you know, they go out and they do weddings and the things that registrars do. So a small vehicle is going to be ideal for them. So they're going to be piloting the first one. The others are then to follow. I know that River Simple, you know, they're so passionate about hydrogen and the potential for hydrogen that they want it to be just right. They don't want to kind of give us a load of cars that have still got kind of issues and snags that we're going to find. I know we're doing the kind of beta testing, which is, and the purpose of that is for lots of people to use them in different ways and different contexts to be able to give that feedback to help them refine it for their final iteration. But they want to make sure that, you know, things are just right. So I know during kind of COVID and lockdown and stuff, they've been making kind of some further refinements to that. So that's the River Simple side of things. In terms of bigger vehicles like some of our own fleet, you'll probably be aware there are local authorities, not many, but a few around the UK, Aberdeen in particular springs to mind, who have been piloting things like hydrogen refuse trucks. And Debbie Jackson is very much on the case and keeping up to speed on the latest technologies and stuff around that. At the moment, the only place to refuel it locally is the refueling station in Abergavenny, but that's only suitable for River Simple's RASA cars. That's what it's been designed for. I don't understand the technology enough, but if we were to, you know, it's to do with different pressures and things. So if we were looking at bigger vehicles like refuse trucks or whatever, and the opportunities for hydrogen there, we would need different refueling stations because they need different pressures, higher pressures or something. So that is something that's very much, you know, we're keeping a watching brief on really, and looking at what other authorities are doing in terms of our own fleet and big vehicles where hydrogen might well be a viable option at some point in the future. It isn't here at the moment. You know, other ideas that are not formulated yet, but we're looking at the potential for if we were to be able to put in another solar farm, is there opportunities to even use the energy from that solar farm to produce the hydrogen? And they're kind of big ideas that we're sort of starting to mull over as we're looking at kind of bigger opportunities, looking at things like the new depot in the south of the county and where that might go and what the opportunities there might be for not just electric vehicle charging, but is there scope or opportunity to be able to produce hydrogen from solar as part of that package? So that's kind of where we are at the moment. Look out for the RASA River Simple cars very soon, starting with our registrar service, and then kind of watch this space really in terms of some of the bigger fleet that we have. We are very much looking at the options, but you know, it's quite early days for the technology so far. So that's kind of where we're at on that at the moment.
Thank you, Hazel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I think that's comprehensive, and by the way, the sun's coming out down here now. Thank you.
Before I invite Councillor Trahan back in, I've got a couple of questions. With regard to the, you may have mentioned it, but it's a big report, and apologies if I overlooked it, but has work actually started on the EV charging strategy? Because this is going to be a significant, make significant progress with regard to where we go with reducing carbon. I just wondered, it was due to start in April, I understand. So has anything commenced on that? Another question I've got is regarding the digital solutions. There's a reference to car sharing schemes. Now, are there other avenues that we're looking at the project regarding car sharing schemes? Because I see that as being an important part of where we go in the future. I have heard reference to it in other areas. it's good to hear you talking about working with other local authorities and watching what they're doing, because obviously anything we can collaborate on, I'm sure, helps. We don't want to all be trying to reinvent. We all want a good result, and if we can use best practice from other authorities, have we got examples of that? Because, you know, obviously this is such a vast subject, and I don't expect you to break it all down now, but I keep thinking, well, what are other authorities doing with regard to that subject, and have we sort of had any help or been piloting ourselves something that other authorities have been looking at? I was going to ask about River Simple, but obviously Tony has mentioned that, because again, I've heard of people desperate to know when we're going to have more opportunities for that to be carried out. But Hazel, you've explained that, thank you. Cross-party working group, how often does it meet? And I'm just wondering, are the minutes available of that, or notes that we can have a look at to see where, you know, how things are progressing? And my last question for now, community meals vehicles. I've noticed electric, I'm sure community meals vehicles, but they're not mentioned in the report. So have we captured in this report all of our electric fleet, or just some that have come along since we declared a climate emergency? So I'll leave it for that. I think there's enough questions for now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. If I start, and there may be a couple of things that Hazel wants to pick up on as well. So in terms of the EV charging strategy, yes, the work was due to start. Funding is in place, and we've secured funding to bring in someone to work on the development of that strategy. Interesting, I've been chatting about this with Deb Hill-Howells over the last couple of days. You mentioned learning from other areas, and that's a really important point for us, because clearly we don't want to reinvent the wheel. And one of the connections we've established is with Oxfordshire Council. That they are very much leading the way in this area, and what I'll do is sort of give a couple of examples. So one of the big challenges we have with EV charging is things like on people who don't have off-road parking, so they have to park on streets. So within Oxfordshire, they've received funding from Innovate UK. That has enabled them to set up an EV team. So they are one of the leaders in the UK in terms of progressing some of these issues. One of the things they've been doing is piloting different approaches for on-street charging. So things like sort of pop-up chargers that you can appear on the edge of the pavement, and gullies, so people can safely run cables from their house under the pavement. You know, to give an example, that's a relatively sort of low cost, low tech solution, and homeowners would potentially pay for that themselves. So we've been having a number of conversations with Oxford to understand what they find that works. Now, the other interesting thing for us in this relationship is that they are significantly ahead in terms of strategy development. So the conversations with them have probably given Deb and colleagues in that area pause for thought in terms of our first steps and what needs to happen on that strategy. But certainly those conversations are taking us ahead in terms in leaps and bounds in terms of our understanding of the issue and what the potential is. So actually, although the work on the strategy per se hasn't started, there's not anything I can show you today. The actual level of understanding is starting to grow significantly, and interesting. Probably it's worth mentioning that off the back of those conversations, some of the other avenues we're exploring is the potential to work across the whole of the Cardiff capital region on this issue. Members may be aware that within the CCR there is a £10 million challenge fund to help local authorities address those challenges which we're unable to resolve with current technologies. One of the themes for that challenge fund is accelerating decarbonisation. So we're speaking with a challenge fund manager there who's also been connected into these conversations with Oxfordshire on the sorts of things we can be doing and how we could potentially pitch some of these challenges to incentivize private sector companies to come up with some of the solutions we need. And because the interesting thing in that area is being realistic. £10 million, even once you divide that up amongst the different projects, there is not going to be the sort of size of pot that makes global companies change their R&D priorities. And clearly one of the things we have to do with the city deal as well is promote local economic growth and give opportunities to local firms. So the tricky thing is pitching those challenges in the right way so that we have workable solutions that will help us decarbonize, make it easier for people to move towards electric and eventually perhaps hydrogen vehicles. And that actually have a chance of bringing the private sector to work on some of those problems. So there is a huge amount starting to happen in that area, and genuinely, I'm really excited about some of the options we have there and the relationships we're starting to establish. Just moving on, you mentioned the digital solutions. I think this is probably not in a dissimilar space, that our work on this started as a result of a challenge fund where members will recall, and I know certainly Councillor Trahan will, because this is something he's very interested in and asks around a lot. And I always feel terrible that we're not able to give a huge update in terms of progress. But what I can say in terms of this is it's been a little bit of a pause because of the pandemic, because the firm that have developed a potential solution for us for digital, using digital to improve access to rural transport, which in turn helps take carbon out because people are travelling in different ways. The testing has had to be paused because of the pandemic. So just as a reminder, a bit of an overview of what this solution could look like. It's divided into three parts. One is a planner to enable people to plan their journeys more effectively, and that takes into account things like mobility issues, how far people can walk, whether they're able to cycle, whether they use a walking frame or a wheelchair, and helps them plan travel routes accordingly. The second part of that solution is something that enables people to book and access a whole host of sort of demand responsive transport schemes. So for example, we could have grassroots booking that rather than going via the contact centre and having to give a day's notice, becomes much easier to do, and people are able to book at shorter notice, but also we're better able to coordinate those journeys and get a more efficient scheme in place around grassroots, and also connect up, for example, and this is one of the areas that's been piloted, the volunteer car scheme that's run by Bridges and is now throughout the county, which is an incredible valuable service for many. And Bridges have found that in testing this, they've gained a huge amount of capacity and efficiency from using this digital solution. And the final thing I'll just say on this is the third part is something called Tag Along, and the idea is it's a secure lift sharing scheme. There are sort of lift sharing things out there at the moment, but this would be something which is particular to, or rather is more mindful of taking into account the needs of our residents and vulnerable people. Whereas someone is travelling sort of from A to B, you may be able to sort of hop in and get a lift with them in the knowledge that there are checks in place, and you're doing so in a safe way. So if I just pause there on digital solutions, you asked the question around the working groups. We do minute those and can make those minutes. I mean, they're not routinely published. It's not to say we couldn't do that. It just isn't something we've done at this stage. But we can certainly make those minutes available to members of the committee. And a final one, the meals vehicles. Actually, I think from memory, they've been electric for some time. So we have factored in, but probably haven't updated the committee. From memory, I think we've got six of the chef-mobile type vehicles that sort of drive around and heat the meals as they go. It's either 4 or 5 of those vehicles are electric. The reason they're not all electric are issues to do with the range, not dissimilar to some of the issues that were raised earlier. We're a rural county. We've got to cover large distances. We've got a lot of hills, and one thing we don't want to do is an electric vehicle that someone is dependent on for hot meals sort of running out of charge 5 miles before it gets to their house. So there's a mix of diesel and electric vehicles, but clearly as the range, as the battery power of the electrical vehicles increases, as with all our fleet, Debbie Jackson and sort of Pauline Batty in that area will be looking to move that fleet over to fully electric as soon as the technology allows. And I think Hazel has just reminded me, I think those have been in place as electric vehicles since 2017.
Thank you very much for all of that. Yes, this is such a vast subject and a lot of work to be done, and it's just some of these things are going to make a significant difference. Some are small, some are bigger, but in total, we have to do everything we can to strive to cut carbon. With regard to members' training, I must be honest, I really enjoyed that, and I thank you, Hazel, for organising that. There are a few members on it. Is there any sort of suggestion that that be repeated? And I think the more people understand, I learned a lot from that, and I'm sure Councillor Jahan did, he was on the course with me. The more people understand about this, it's all about getting the message out there, whether it's through a course or whether the information that's been circulated about. I mean, we hear about it every day on the news. I know that we all take an interest, but as much information about, I sometimes think if we knew how much carbon we'd save on a particular, which was pointed out to us on the course, on a particular action, whether it's flying, driving, what we eat, all of these things, it's useful to sort of provide as much information as we can. We don't overwhelm people, but in a format that would perhaps help. And I thought that course was very, very good. So yes, if we can, obviously, I know you're working hard on achieving all of these actions and making good progress, but I just think we need to let people know what we've done and how much more we can achieve, how much we've achieved and how much more there is to do.
Yeah, so we're looking to repeat the carbon literacy training. So for those who aren't aware, there's the Carbon Literacy Project, have kind of accredited training, and it's a day's worth of training, but it's sort of spread out into chunks across a week. And it gives you the kind of background to the science behind the kind of climate change in an accessible way, and helps you to look at the impact that we can all have on climate change, both personally and kind of through the workplace, or, as an elected member through the council. So the feedback that we've had from it was very, very positive. And as an organisation now, as a result of the number of people who went on the training and the fact that senior managers attended the training too, we're now, we found out last week, we're now a bronze level carbon literate organisation. So we're looking at what becoming a silver accredited body involves, and it involves 15% of the workforce having done the training. So that's quite a big commitment. So what we're looking to do is to have received training for a handful of, perhaps half a dozen officers in-house to be able to deliver the training ourselves, and then hopefully that might be able to be rolled out through Talent Lab and our in-house training provision as well. But also to roll that out to the wider community as well, because there's definitely, we had the four of the community reps on the climate emergency working group attended. They were really positive about it, and there were people who have spent their kind of life working on sort of sustainability and energy type projects, and at the end of it, they had learnt new things that they didn't know. So it's really good to have feedback like that, and we are definitely looking to roll it out further. Just to come back briefly, you mentioned how often the Climate Emergency Working Group meet. They meet quarterly, and have done since January 2020. That was the first meeting. So they've met quarterly over that period, obviously face to face to begin with, and remotely more latterly. So But as Matt said, happily share the minutes of those with you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. Right, I'm going to invite Councillor Treharne in now, and then perhaps our cabinet member would like to finish off for us. So, Councillor Treharne.
Thank you, Chair. You stole my thunder, rather, because I just wanted to speak about the training that we had. It was very interesting and very eye-opening, I will say, and that it's just it got you thinking, you know, of just about everyday things. And I would encourage anybody who hasn't taken it to undertake it. It really does inform you of everything. So it was excellent, and I'm very pleased to be given the opportunity to attend that training. So thank you, Hazel, for bringing that forward to us. Highly recommended.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Treharne. Right, Councillor Pratt, I'm going to draw this to a close now because we've given it a good discussion, an hour and a half. Would you like me to sum up first, or would you like to sort of add some comments now?
I'm happy to add some comments, Chair, before you sum up, if that's okay with you. Can I thank the Chair and the committee for inviting me along to take note of what's been discussed today, and can I thank all members for the robust questions and the way that they've obviously scrutinised this paper in detail. That's greatly appreciated. When I took over this portfolio 2 years ago, there wasn't really any budget, and we had to start looking for the quick wins. We mustn't forget that Hazel is still only part-time, and it's just quite incredible what her and Matt and the officers across the council have achieved in the last 2 years. We've been very successful at getting government money, and our bids for the circular economy funding brought in £626,000 in January, and we've been able to make some rapid progress following this. So we will, be assured we'll be accessing every bid that and grant that we can to forward this agenda, and every department in the council is committed and engaged with our target to net zero by 2030. So, great thanks to our officers who really are leading the way in Wales on this agenda. And you can hear from Matt and Hazel by the way they're communicating with other councils, and they're really, on the case and, way ahead really in what's coming out of Cardiff Bay. We would like to have achieved more, but as has been discussed today, we are waiting for technology in many cases to catch up. And, an example of that is we'd love to have an electric waste vehicle, but there just isn't one, even though we've looked at many, and Debbie is really on the case here. There just isn't one that can cope with our rural county, and we don't want to see an electric vehicle breaking down and having to send a diesel flatbed up there to pick it up. That would be dreadful. But as soon as there's one available, we'll be on it. I am encouraged that we have a super ministry in Welsh Government now, and we've got Julie James heading that up. And I would encourage everybody to look at the Welsh Government's plan, which was published this week, and I know the Chief Executive has distributed to everybody. Some things that are noted in there is to introduce an extended producer responsibility scheme to incentivise waste reduction. So there's going to be a massive shift. Whereas now local councils take the responsibility for recycling, in the future it will be the producers of products. And one of the things that's being piloted in the north of Wales is a method of, deposit return scheme on plastic bottles and cans using an app on your phone. It's very expensive to put machines into supermarkets. I think they cost about over £100,000 each, but there'll be the ability to use this app on the roadside so that you can get the money back on your products. So there's some really exciting things happening. We would have liked to have done more, and we're not complacent at all. We are going to really up our game and raise our level of ambition between now and November. We're going to look at everything very carefully, and as has been noted, you know, we need to get better, and we're probably going to need to bring in some experts, because although we've got tremendous wealth of experience within our officers, there are some, this is a very expert area, and in order to actually measure our emissions, for example, we're going to probably need some expert help in order to do that. Finally, I would like to just thank all of the volunteers that are on our community champion working group, and also our our working group and our community champions. We have some fantastic individuals with incredible experience and skills that contribute in such a rich way to this agenda, and you know, I'd like to end up really by thanking them. But it's been a brilliant meeting. I look forward to this coming to full council, because this agenda is going to grow in the future, and as I say, I'm very pleased that Welsh Government are actually putting an importance on it, and we look forward to the schemes that they're going to forward that we can take part in. But thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much, Councillor Pratt. Your enthusiasm shines through. We're all, it's a very important subject, and your enthusiasm and enthusiasm of our officers, I'm sure, we're going to continue to make good progress on this matter. It really has been a very good discussion this morning, and I thank everybody for their contributions. I'm going to read out, I'm going to sum up now, read out the what we've discussed, and as I say, I thank the officers very much. If you could pass on the thanks from everybody, because we've all enjoyed this discussion this morning, I'm sure. And if you could pass it on to your teams, that would be very, very much appreciated. So it's been, you know, it has, as I said, excuse me if I look away a minute because I've got it on another screen. It's been most informative discussion on, it's been on a, you know, it is a vast issue, a cross-cutting issue. So some of the points raised this morning is that we understand that, oh, I'm just getting my screen straight. We understand there's a variety of reasons slowing the progress around electric vehicles. We're very encouraged to hear about the Library of Things, which is a really useful community initiative. Then in terms of street lighting, we are pleased to hear that the rollout of the LED is almost complete, 500 left to go. We've heard that remote working has reduced business mileage and has contributed to carbon reduction. The expansion of green spaces through wildflower planting is encouraged and has transformed some areas. We had a long discussion about that. The committee raised issues such as the need for bike racks on buses, acknowledging there are difficulties at the moment in accommodating them. Also, the need to maintain grass areas to ensure safety and access, whilst recognising the benefits brought about by initiatives such as No Mow May. Officers informed that many areas aren't mowed in May, and they will be scheduled, such as a priority. The team's focusing on verges at junctions and sports fields as the first priority. Members supported the No Mow May initiative and asked officers to consider how to increase wildflowers along Monmouthshire's B roads, acknowledging that not all of the land is within our gift to change. Members asked officers to provide more information to the public on these initiatives. We all felt strongly that cycle paths need to be prioritised, noting the changes in travel patterns due to more home working and more people wanting to walk or cycle safely. The example given being between Roggett and Dundee. Officers advise that active travel consultation is currently underway, and they encourage elected members and the public to engage on this and provide feedback on the routes proposed. We heard that the bid for funding to Welsh Government has been rejected, but that the Burns report has highlighted this, and the council is lobbying at every opportunity. Action, the committee agreed a formal recommendation to the cabinet member to pursue this and to report back to this committee. We then went on to discuss renewable energy, a member highlighting that neighbouring authorities are harnessing the power of wind turbines. Officers explained that some of the challenge the council is facing is the ability to connect our solar farms and other renewable energy sources to the national grid. So the action there is the officer agreed to provide a response to the committees outside of the meeting on the barriers to renewable energy.
Members raised hydrogen fuels and the extent to which we are pursuing this, and officers explained the difficulties, and it is a fueling infrastructure, but reassured we are still exploring bigger opportunities around solar and hydrogen. Then we queried the progress on the electric vehicle charging strategy, and we were reassured that funding is in place to harness expertise from Oxfordshire County Council, who are piloting different approaches for charging on this street and are leading the way on this, and that learning from them will help us progress our strategy, which is an issue across the Cardiff capital region. In terms of our digital solutions to improve rural access to transport, or access to rural transport, we have paused this work during the pandemic, but this is restarting. We also discussed the progress of electric vehicles for delivering school meals and community meals. Officers advising us that they are working on expanding this as far as the technology allows. And we commented on the carbon literacy training, which has been helpful for those who attended. We are now a bronze level accredited council. We're looking to further roll out training to the wider workforce and the community. So in conclusion, we're looking to refresh our strategy, but the action plan is constantly evolving to ensure we're exploring the latest initiatives. We have discussed this fully this morning, and we're making a formal recommendation to Cabinet Member Councillor Lisa Dimmock in terms of the cycle initiatives. The actions highlighted will be addressed and followed up by our scrutiny team. So I thank you all very much for that very informative paper and the discussions that followed, and we've been an hour and 40 minutes, so I think you really have given it a lot of attention. So we will now move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you for waiting patiently, Mr. Burkett, and I'll ask Mr. Alan Burkett to introduce the Welsh language report. If he's there, there he is.
Good morning.
Well done.
Right, yeah, thanks very much. It's fascinating listening to the stuff that Hazel and Matt were saying there. It's amazing what goes on in the background and the work that goes in, I think. Mine is slightly less exciting than all that sort of work, but important nonetheless. Just a little sort of background to this particular report. It's something that has been going on for years and years and years. We had just as sort of background, and we used to have a Welsh language board, which was based in Cardiff, which was created on the back of the Welsh Language Act of 1993. And in local authorities, I used to work at Burnley Gwent. I think I wrote my first Welsh language scheme about 1997. So Monmouthshire probably would have done the same. And every 3 years after that, with the agreement of the Welsh Language Board, we would produce a scheme. And then every year we'd have to report on progress within that. It was a very detailed report. 2011, the legislation changed. The Welsh Language (Wales) Measure 2011 came in. This scrapped the Welsh Language Board, which was a fairly toothless organisation, and introduced the Welsh Language Commissioner's role as a compliance, head of compliance really for the Welsh language within Wales. And that was established in about 2011, 2012. We were then allocated 174 plus standards, which covers an imaginable amount of areas, but it was very, very detailed. And we've sort of taken our stance on what we thought they meant. And then every year then we got to formally report on a sort of structured basis. Or the law says we got to report on specific areas of our sort of compliance and actions we've taken through the year. So that's what I'm doing this year. So this is 1st of April 2020 to the end of March this year. So I don't know if I need to share this document or not. All right, this is going to be a challenge. I'm trying to find it. Bear me a second. I have this here a minute ago. I'm sorry about this, folks. I actually lost power on the computer and disappeared for a couple of minutes, and I came back with my camera on. There's Matt. Matt pointed out to me. Reports. Here it is. If you Matt's just told me I don't need to share this one. So what I'll do, I'll just run you through it. You can follow it through with me. I just love it when IT equipment works beautifully. Here we go. Right, yeah, so this one's in the last financial year. And this has to be published now on the 30th of June on our website, and a copy then sent to the Welsh Language Commissioner for them to obviously review and see where we are. It's a legislative requirement under the Welsh Language Wales measure, as I've said earlier. It includes a little section on translations. That is something we are just absolutely overrun with translations now. One of the sort of main parts of it is that anything that we do publicly in terms of, say, the website and publishing documentation, etc., is going to be done bilingually. So all our sort of Facebook and Twitter interactions and so on, which gives us a really good profile in terms of our Welsh language profile as an authority. We've got to do it, but it's something that we're keen to comply with. But our translation, well, we actually sort of have a team of translators, but they're external. They're not. We sort of contract them in, but they are absolutely flat out at the moment because we've got the RDLP on the go and so many things on the go at the moment. But they seem to cope. But anyway, we've got an increase in budget for next year, which I think takes into account how much stuff we are doing. In terms of workforce, all of our recruitment advertising is done bilingually, and we do a Welsh language skills assessment for all vacancies. I'll come on to that a little bit later because we have got an issue in that particular area. Staff are all offered training, and the elected members also are invited to take part in this training. At the moment, obviously, it's online. Councillor Easton has been doing this training for many years now and seems to enjoy it. We're looking, because we struggle to actually appoint Welsh speakers, we're going to try and offer the same training as we have done since I've been in post since 2012. The Cymraeg and Weithle, so Welsh in the workplace, with the different levels of training. But we're looking to try and buy in to a pilot with a course that's called Say Something in Welsh. So it's an interactive one. It's on an app, and you can use it on your computer as well. It's a little bit like Duolingo, but it's a very good one. And there's apparently, if a person, there's a 3-month course and a 6-month course, and if that person isn't going to attain some element of fluency by the end of that, they won't have to pay. So it's something we're looking to try and expand our Welsh speaking skills within the workforce. So we have got a challenge, as I said earlier, about frontline staff, but I will give you the information a bit later. Customer service, we've got a Welsh language line that is working. It's working well. We've got low numbers that operate the line, but the feedback from people that ring me and the other people who are on there is that they can't believe that Monmouthshire provide this service. They're over the moon when they can speak Welsh to somebody within Monmouthshire County Council, and they don't particularly expect it. So we've got to make sure that we keep this particular language line running well. I've got numbers there in terms of there's not masses of phone calls, but because I think the expectation levels are low, but an awful lot there. I think Welsh speakers must have a lot of issues with their gardens and collection of refuse and garden waste, because most of the phone calls I get seem to be, can I book 5 lanes, can I book Llan Voist or whatever. There's an element there on policy making. There's so many elements within the standard. They are exceptionally complex. I mean, I haven't got a degree, I haven't got any law degree, but it certainly it challenges me on many occasions during working week. So Welsh language skills of staff, we've got there's more than this, because this doesn't include school-based staff, where we're looking at the staff based within the council itself. There's 264 with Welsh language skills. A lot of learners, some then more advanced, some then with pretty good skills, and but 35 fluent. And I broke them down in a table there into particular sort of service areas. Okay, so some are pretty well sort of blessed with Welsh speakers, and others then are really struggling, and that is an area that we must challenge somehow. Recruitment, we've got to get information regarding recruitment advertising. We actually advertise every single role now as Welsh language desirable. Our biggest challenge, and this is where I'm going to challenge us as an authority, is how do we get more Welsh speakers? In total, we had over the last 2 years 516 vacancies, and only 2 have been designated as essential. We're going to struggle to increase our Welsh language staffing levels with that particular set of data. Whether the Welsh Language Commissioner, when looking through this particular report, will challenge us on that or ask us questions on that, I don't think it's for the want of trying. I think it's, you know, Monmouthshire is an area where we have got Welsh speakers, but it's making ourselves, I suppose, an authority whereby people want to come and join us because they got Welsh language skills. It's a very difficult area. Other authorities have different issues as well, appointed Welsh speakers, but we've got to try harder, really. We've got various sort of tools and techniques we can use in terms of internet and YouTube and so on, and we really try to explore that. But the reason I'm saying this is the fact that the Welsh language standards expect us to provide a service in the medium Welsh to the standard you would in the medium English. Quite obviously, from the figures that I'm telling you about, we're not made to do that. So at some stage, I'm expecting that we're going to get a challenge from the Commissioner. It could be a nice gentle challenge in that he's going to try and help us to try and find this path through, or it could be a challenge to say, you know, I'll be reading reports and we've still got the same issues. So there's it's quite a positive report. That one is an area I'm particularly concerned about, and I've got information on the staff training for that's been this year. It's less this year, I think, because of people doing additional roles, and it being online possibly has made it a bit more difficult for people to do it. For some people, then it's better because they don't have to go actually physically travel to anywhere. But that's in a nutshell. It's not a big report, but it covers the areas that they want to know as a Commissioner's office. So if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
That's great. Thank you very much for that report. Very clear, and puts us totally in the picture, and you've set us a challenge. So I'm going to invite members' questions first, and we have Councillor Edwards. Now, I understand you're having a bit of a problem with your technology, but I've got your questions on email should you drop out. But if you are there, would you like to start asking your questions? Right. Okay, the first, I'll try again. Are you there, Christopher? Councillor Edwards? No, okay. Well, what I'll do, I'll read out his questions and hopefully he might, I don't know, perhaps he might be able to hear. He's managed to raise his hand. Right. He asks, first of all, 74 calls have been made to the Welsh language line. For perspective, how many calls are made for the same period in other languages, including English? That's question one. There's 3 questions, so I'll just scroll down the list. I can move my mouse over.
Do you want to answer them as you in order?
Yeah,
or?
okay. Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah, I've got they're the calls I answered on the line there. About 75,000 English, I think. Matt has just sent me a little message to say there's about 75,000 English. But this is literally as you ring the council number, it gives you the opportunity either to ask in English or in Welsh. Again, I think expectation levels are low. That probably some Welsh speakers would take a punt on ringing the English line or pressing 1 rather than pressing 2. I do get people pressing 2 when they don't speak Welsh. I have to put them back through that line. So yeah, there's a massive disparity. But I think the more, you know, I found that the figures have increased over the years, slowly but surely. But I think it's you know, you're not all of a sudden going to have a parity in numbers. We haven't got the parity in numbers of Welsh speakers within Monmouthshire. But I would anticipate that you know, it's a bit of a slow burn. Okay. As for other languages, I'm not sure at all because I only deal with the Welsh language line. Okay.
Welsh language skills of staff. The range in the 5-point table is from beginner to fluent. Is this a self-evaluation by the speaker or evaluation by somebody else?
With the fluent Welsh speakers, I've spoken to all of them, and I know the people in the higher levels. With the lower levels, and I'm not saying that in a disparaging way, but the people I see on the Mynediad or whatever, I do tend to I know because I've organised the classes for them. So it could be that somebody's done a year at a particular level or 2 years, and the further you go through the course, then you go up through the levels. I'm in contact with certainly with the ones who are currently learning and the people who've learned in the distant past. So really, it's if you go on self-assessment, people tend to under-assess their skills. So I tend to have a chat with them and see if we can communicate. I can usually assess at what level they're at. It's not an exact science at all, and I'll put my hands up there because I can converse with anybody in Welsh, but and I would say I'm fluent, but again, it's different levels of fluency and so on. I mean, I feel embarrassed when I speak to some people who are this level, so I don't understand half the words they're saying because it's not in my vocabulary. So it's language is an interesting area.
Okay, thank you for that. And is there it breaks it down into service areas? Is there a service area that we need to be concerned about? For example, CYP looks a bit thin on the ground. That's the last question.
Yes, I would agree with you there. It's front line really where we're looking, where we got the challenge. When fair play to Matt, we've got people into the contact centre now who are Welsh speakers, so we've appointed on the basis of essential skills there. That's worked really, really well. I suppose at the moment we got a little bit of a sort of holiday from this with COVID, but once we start going back into say normal ways of working and our offices open and so on, we haven't got many frontline staff that could actually speak to somebody that comes through the door. That's an issue. And you are right, in education we got Welsh medium education, and we got very little skills in terms of in our education and our CYP department. Yes, there are. I'm not going to flower it. We've got areas that we are struggling on. If we were challenged, we would have difficulty to offset that challenge, really.
Thank you for those answers. And Councillor Edwards, were you able to hear them? I see you're still in the call, but obviously you're having difficulty getting your camera or your microphone. I'm not sure which. Okay, I'll move now on to Councillor Easton. He's next on the list.
Hello, Baradar, Alan. Shwari Seisnig, if you don't mind, I'll speak in English.
Okay.
What support do you believe the Welsh language group in Monmouthshire could give to town and community councils? Because this is a matter which has been raised by a councillor in Caldicot. Are we required to provide Welsh language translations, or is it desirable? And either way, what help can be given to them to do it? Because it could become a cost.
Right. I think you're referring to the websites for the town community councils.
Well, that's one aspect of the website, but the other aspect is producing minutes of meetings, for example.
I wouldn't. I've had conversations now with all the town and community. Well, I've had with Monmouth, Usk, Shepstow, Caldicot, and Abergavenny. I've had very fruitful conversations with them. We're trying to be realistic in terms of resources. Website's probably the biggest public-facing service that you provide in terms of town and community councils. So I've had conversation. In fact, I had a conversation with Councillor Tudor Thomas, and we got the Abergavenny Town Council one on the go, and it was advertised. And I think everyone sort of followed from there. So I've had conversations now with the clerks in all times. What I've offered is that we'll do the translation of the websites. I'm willing to have conversations with the town and community council, because it's not a case of doing everything, because you're not under the same sort of requirements as we are. You're still actually under the old Welsh Language Act, so the requirements aren't so strict.
Okay.
So I'm quite willing to have conversations. It's about being sort of, what do you call it? Having a sensible conversation to say it's not going to be, it doesn't have to be everything, but it's, we're in Wales, we're a proud Welsh authority. It's having that sort of showing our commitment to the Welsh language, and we can do that on websites, not by having everything translated, but doing it on a sort of piece by piece basis. In terms of the translation, I've offered to do that because I know there's a lot. Town community council do a lot for work for us in terms of providing services for us, and I've said I've got a budget. I'm prepared to do the translation. sort of, it's like a quid pro quo sort of thing. So, we're always there to do that for them.
Okay. But I'm not enamoured Dysgu Cymraeg on Zoom. Don't like it.
It's not for everybody, is it? No.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eason. Councillor Geppy, would you like to ask your questions?
Thanks, Alan, for bringing this really important report that some people most probably overlook because it's a Welsh language and the population in Monmouthshire doesn't speak, but it's something we should celebrate. And thank you again for changing that sign in Caldecott Castle, which unfortunately I've got a Welsh speaker who gets really irate when spelling is incorrect. So thank you very much, and it was promptly done.
Right.
Well done you for responding ASAP. Look, there's more that we can do to celebrate the Welsh language in this county. Thank you for bringing this report, but I would like you to bring a bit more to this report. You said that you don't include the Welsh speakers in our school staff. Well, I think we should. You could do this and say, because there's a lot more fluent Welsh speakers in the school. I know that because I can declare an interest. My daughter works in Monmouthshire as a teacher, and then that will sort of highlight that there are more people that actually are not being portrayed as Welsh speakers. And just, I think I'd like you to sort of highlight the changes within our school, the expansions within this report, that it goes side by side. Ysgol has expanded its nursery sizes. We're considering, a third school in the Usk Raglan area, and I think this should go hand in hand, just perhaps as a short sentence at the beginning of the report, so that we need to celebrate the Welsh language and our Welsh culture, because you won't get more passionate than being Welsh and living in Wales. It's such a beautiful county, and we're at the beginning of it. And I think maybe a bit more things Welsh within an area, not just about the Welsh language report policies that we need to do. And just thank you very much for bringing it. And let's do a little bit more. And also, to be selling it, we've got in Caldecott a Welsh youth club. Well done for the people, volunteers, for running that. But who knew about that? Who knew about it? That's one. We need 5 more in every town. So thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Councillor Guppy. There's some really interesting points in there, actually, because the population at the last census within Monmouthshire that were regarded as fluent Welsh speakers was 9.9%, which comes to about 8,500 people. I would anticipate that would have increased now in the census of 2021. So we're talking about a minority. It's a fairly big minority. 10% of your population speaking a particular language, and some of those first, like my mum lives just around the corner. It's her first language. She doesn't speak to me in English at all. And there are many examples of that within the county. So yeah, I think you're right from that perspective. With the data for schools, see, our focus with this particular report is our resource to provide a service within our council services. So the education, we can't use the schools as a resource in terms of. So if we said at the moment we got 35 Welsh speakers, if you added schools to that, say you double that number, but we couldn't use that extra resource to provide our services in environmental health or in policy performance or chief executives, so we could put it in there because it gives you, but it doesn't serve much of a purpose, because it's almost as if if you've got 75 people, not 35, you should be able to provide more provide more services, but we can't because they are ring-fenced in terms of their duties within the schools. Does that make sense? Perhaps I haven't explained that properly.
No, I understand that. It's just that we could promote it as a forum and then invite all Welsh speakers, because we've got it HR, they've got it, what language, if they wish to put it down, that their first language or a Welsh learner, and we perhaps could provide a forum once a year, you know, with time off for teachers and school staff, or an afternoon for all Welsh speakers to get together in view of how else we can promote it within the county. So maybe no, you can't do that in the figures because it's incorrect to do that, but it's definitely that we should be bringing, you know, once, even if it's just once a year, twice a year would be brilliant, to bring all people that employers that are employed by Monmouthshire County Council together in a forum. And you can do this easy. And I mean, it's been difficult to do things over Teams and so and media, but actually you can get more people involved because it is easier. You know, if it might have to be after school, but you can have more participants. I've done it myself working with the NHS. I've joined NHS webinars that have been an hour long, and there's hundreds of people on there, and it's, you know, if it's, you know, quick agenda, quick presentation. You know, I've had, you know, there's lots, 4 presentations within an hour, quick, short sort of things. We can do this and it will help promote it. And remember the youngsters in the school that I think, and I'm not quite sure if all secondary schools, they do maths, English, science and Welsh as a must in their GCSEs. So our future generation, they're all Welsh learners, and actually some of them are coming out with valid qualifications. I don't think we're selling ourselves enough. That's what I'm saying, and just thank you for the work you're doing. I think we can go a bit further.
Yeah, it's a really good point about the Teams thing. I mean, I'm in communication with the fluent people who are learning on quite a regular basis, but I do like the idea about, I mean, I try and get the Welsh speakers in the authority to be really proactive. You know, wear your lanyard, you know, speak a bit of Welsh, encourage your colleagues to engage and so on. So I guess it's a really good point. But it is about, I think the Eisteddfod in 2016 sort of galvanised people together. We could do another Eisteddfod. You know, that was just a fantastic event, and it's had such a great impact on Monmouthshire and the Welsh language. I agree.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Guppy. Some really useful points there. Right, I haven't got anybody else who's indicated they wish to speak, so if I could just follow up on that. When I was reading through the reports, I was thinking, how can we encourage, it looks as though encouraging people who are actually already employed by Monmouthshire to learn Welsh would be a good way forward. You're obviously doing that, and very well done on that, but how can we encourage more people, if that's going to be helpful? And it's all about incentives, and I think Councillor Guppy's just summed it up with incentives. They don't have to be sort of just have your training paid for. It's got to be something that we need. We need to sort of encourage people to use the Welsh language that they're learning and develop. I mean, you know all this, you've been doing it for a long time. I appreciate that, but I do think that recruitment would be ideal. Yes, that really would be ideal. But if we have people who are interested and they are starting to learn, we've got to really push that. And if the Welsh Government want 30% of people to speak Welsh by 2050, perhaps they could come forward with that. You mentioned earlier some assistance from them with regard to this challenge, what we can do. And if we could have events, if we could have incentives that would, as I say, encourage people. The Eisteddfod was wonderful. That's a really good example.
Yeah.
I mean, that I know a lot of people were really keen to learn Welsh after that. I'm a little bit disappointed, to be honest, that not more people chose to learn Welsh during the lockdown, because we heard about people choosing to learn different languages, and you know, it just seems a little bit of a sad that hasn't been reflected in the figures. But a point I just want to make about the schools, I think Councillor Guppy's got a very good point there. Maybe not if we didn't have the figures included in our staff, but as a separate part of the report, just to see how much has developed. And we all know the Welsh schools are going from strength to strength. if we could just recognise that in your reports, that the actual developments there, the sort of the keenness for more and more children to learn Welsh. I mean, I've seen a little Welsh school out at the Bryn in Abergavenny, just outside the Bryn, just develop. It moved to the youth centre. It's gone up to the Welsh school now up on the St David's Road, and I've just seen that. You know, it's just sort of really blossomed, and it's really encouraging to see. And I think that Councillor Guppy makes a good point that if we could see how much is being developed in the schools, that might help us with regard to how we can help you. But you've set us a challenge regarding what we can do to encourage more Welsh speakers in Monmouthshire County Council. So yes, anything we can do to help. But I do appreciate the report, and I thank you very much for that. So
I think you make a really valid point there, actually, because if we're going to appoint Welsh speakers, it gives us a guaranteed Welsh speaker. The training, I mean, I've been involved with Welsh language as an officer doing this job since 1997, and I've put probably in excess of 1,000 people through training, and I can count on one hand how many of those have gone on to achieve fluency, because it's a long path to fluency. So when we say we'll train, we give them that option, and we fully support it, we fund it, which is fantastic. We give them all the support I can. But it's a long path. You're going to be really committed to do it, and hopefully this sort of fast track course will. So many people out there want to do it, but they almost want to become a Welsh speaker tomorrow, and that is so difficult. Anybody who tries to learn a particular skill or a language, anything like that, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a long path and takes commitment. But I think going back to what you said about learning Welsh, I think. Yeah, perhaps our numbers have dropped in terms of that this year, but Duolingo was the single most popular language being learnt during lockdown in the world. So it's a bit of a balance, isn't it? But I do take your points there, and I think possibly probably too late for this year on this report, but for next year perhaps we can put some of our achievements in that report. I think that's probably quite a good idea. It's something I hadn't thought of before. But certainly perhaps showing our commitment, not just in terms of our legal requirements within our report, but perhaps some of our achievements then in terms of increasing numbers here there. I think that might be a very good suggestion, actually.
Okay, thank you ever so much, and thank you, members. And I will submit. That's okay.
Sorry. Can I just interrupt?
Who's that? Sorry.
It's Linda. Sorry.
Okay.
Just to come back. Listen, I think it doesn't have to be a long report, but can I request that we have a report that goes to full council about celebrating our achievements and perhaps looking back of what's happened since the Eisteddfod. Let's raise the game bit, and could we possibly look into an annual forum of all Welsh speakers that including teaching staff. I know it may be more work for you, Alan, and I know that you're the only one, but a short report. Let's just celebrate it and put it on the agenda, and not just a subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alan?
I'll leave that with you, Alan. Mr. Burke, I'll leave that with you to consider. Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Right. I'm just moving my mouse across so I can find this. Right. Okay, so thank you once again for bringing the report on compliance on adhering to the Welsh language legislation over the period 2020 to 2021. Alan, you've highlighted several key issues, which are that training online has been successful and courses such as Say Something in Welsh have been very useful. Our Welsh speaker telephone line is working effectively, and whilst we don't have a huge volume of calls, those if we use the line are very pleased to have this service. Recruiting Welsh speaker appointments is a key area where we are struggling. We advertise every role as Welsh speaker desirable, but we have only recruited 2 individuals, and we are not currently recruiting Welsh language as essential requirements. Members asked for clarification on the number of Welsh calls, which are 74, in relation to the number of English-speaking calls, which are 75,000. Another member asked whether town and community councils are supported to show commitment to Welsh language. The officer advised that he has offered to assist through translation of their websites, but suggest that they are not subject to the same requirements as a county council. Another member suggested there are more Welsh speakers in our staff than are reported due to staff within schools not have been counted. The officer explained that whilst we could count these staff in our report, but given that they are ring-fenced to their roles, they are not able to support our council services. The suggestion by the member was that we could promote the Welsh language if we held events with Welsh-speaking staff. So that was, as I say, an excellent report, and I thank you very much indeed, and thank all members for their contribution. And we look forward to seeing that. Hopefully, we can help in some way in the future with regard to some events or some means of promoting the language of Welsh. I thank you very much indeed. And thank you, members. Right, the next item on the agenda is to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting. Everybody happy with that? Can I have a proposer and seconder for that, please? Are you happy with it?
Happy to approve those. Thank you, Chair.
That was Councillor Anne Webb. Do we have a seconder?
Did we have the meeting minutes, Chair? I'm not sure.
Yes, they were circulated, Councillor Easton.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were in a supplementary
Separate
agenda.
item.
Yes, yeah. Do you want to take a minute to read them?
No, it's okay.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second, Chair.
Councillor Trahan. Anybody object them being accepted? Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read them apart from Councillor Easton. It was a supplementary item. Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to the Strong Communities Forward work programme. I'll just go into Not Government like that. I haven't got that on my screen. Mr. Easton, you made a suggestion for an item on the
Sorry, Chair, yes. Well, there's two suggestions. One was to come up from Councillor Guppy as a B4245 be put as part of our work programme. And I think that was it really, Chair, wasn't it? The other one was to do with grass cutting. You're muted as well.
You're muted, Chairman.
Sorry about that. I was trying to use another screen on this computer, and that's what happens.
Right.
I'm trying to get into the forward work planner. Perhaps I could ask Hazel to come in here then and help out while I'm looking for it.
Thank you, Chair. I think the other issue that Councillor Easton raised was in relation to crime and disorder scrutiny.
That's it, sorry about that, yeah.
So, Councillor Easton pointed out that we haven't had any for a while. I would second that. I would say in the past we did do an extensive piece of work on speed management, which was our crime and disorder item that year. But yes, I think it's worth tabling something. But would members have any specific areas that they feel are of a concern? Because we don't invite partners per se. We scrutinise the partnership response to crime and disorder in relation to our responsibilities. So it's a question of really where your concerns are.
There are numerous concerns, which whether you ask partners to come and discuss them with us, I think is another question. I'm a member of the Police and Crime Panel, and I've got a couple of questions for the next meeting regarding CCTV provision. I'm not sure we're getting the best value for money out of that. I think that might be worth looking at. I don't know what members think, but it's a valuable resource, but it seems to be complicated by the fact that if you want information, you've got to go all the way to Blenavon to get it, and it's spending the office time to go in there. Is it possible to look at CCTV in the round? It's not wrong here.
We can suggest that, Councillor Easton.
Do the other partner members in Abergavenny, Chepstow, Monmouth support my thoughts though, because they're the partner towns on the CCTV provision by Monmouth County Council.
Yeah.
Rather than me just say it's no good in Caldecott, I'm not saying that, but is it the same in Abergavenny, Monmouth, and Chepstow, for example? Or the feeling?
Okay, what are you actually suggesting, Councillor Easton, that we have somebody to come along and talk to us about it?
I think it might be useful for us to be able to warrant the use of CCTV, or is it warranting itself in its use? Because I feel that it's run at Blenavon by a group of operators. Are they able to give the full time they need to give to Abergwenny, Chepstow, Monmouth? We got about 40 or 50 cameras, and if there's an incident, it may not be reported immediately, but if you report an incident to the police, they've then got to go trailing back through the records of the day's records, you might say, and it means a trip to Blenavon to get it yourself. So it's going to take an officer's day out of the job just to get information. So I'm just wondering, is the system up to 21st century standards then? So
Right,
Can
now,
I just say, Chair, I can't get
That's all right.
a hand up symbol on my screen at the moment. I don't know, so this is why I'm butting in.
No.
But I thoroughly agree with what Councillor Easton has said. A huge amount of money is put into this, and exactly what he says about the Blenavon viewing. Can we have an update on it, please, Chairman? Can it be on the Forward Work programme? I think I'm behind with it all at the moment. I don't really know what's going on, but I was involved at the beginning of the CCTV in town, so we would love an update. And I do see your point about the Blenavon viewing. I think it used to be in Monmouthshire, but it's now in Blenavon. Thank you very much.
I understand it's going to Newport now.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. If I could just make a suggestion here, then what I would like to suggest is town and community councils used to have a member designated to go and be part of a working group on the CCTVs. Do we have an equivalent here in Monmouthshire?
Yes.
Yeah. So could we ask officer to come along to our next or one of our select committee meetings with a report on the activities of the CCTV? We used to get full reports on how many times cameras were out of action with it, you know, what the follow-up was. If we could ask for a similar type report to start with.
Our officer is Andy Mason.
Right. We could ask.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's get the ball rolling.
Yeah. Should we start there? Should we ask Mr. Mason if he'd come along with some facts and figures circulated previously before, if he's happy to do that, and give us an update on the current situation regarding the CCTV reports.
Yes, I support that, Chair, but they do have 3 meetings a year, I understand, the CCTV working group for the county, so there will be a tie in there, but yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jehan.
Thank you, Chair. So at a recent Monmouth Town Council meeting, we had a PCSO officer attend our meeting and give us some updates of things that have been happening in the past 12 months. I apologise for the background noise. There's a neighbour cutting his grass outside, so I apologise for that. There was a number of incidents where there was a group of teenagers congregating and having a get-together during lockdown, and there was a concern that this wasn't being policed enough, and the fact that as a town council, our contribution toward in the precept to the police, we're not getting value for money. So are other town councils having that feel as though they've got the same issue? And is it worth asking the commissioner to come along and to so we can ask for more bobbies on the beat, if you like, because we're all getting more properties built, but there's no permanent police presence in the towns anymore. And I feel that for the money that we're paying, we should have permanent bobbies on the beat, if you like. I don't think we're getting value for money. I don't know if other members of the committee feel the same.
You've made a specific question, a comment there about the Police and Crime Commissioner come in. Yes, I wouldn't object to that, but I think if we did ask him to be involved, we ought to involve a lot more councillors as well.
Yes, good point. Does anybody have any comments about that?
I think it's a very good proposal.
There is a comment in the chat bar about that. Perhaps we'll start with the CCTV and see where that leads us.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we see what feedback we get from that, and we can take it one step at a time. I mean, I'm happy to invite perhaps the inspector, but I do know that the PCSO's report to town councils, which is I'm sure very useful. But you know, if there's some means of expanding on that for us, then yes, indeed, more than happy to do that. But I'm getting comments that it's not really an issue for the select, so maybe should we just stick with the CCTV for now, then we'll make further inquiries about that to see where that responsibility lies.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And then we've got one more item suggested by Councillor Smith, review of highway infrastructure.
Chairman, I apologise for, it's not my fault, I've got problems with the access. So I've sat and observed your meeting and I found it thoroughly interesting, thank you. So problems all the way. As I made reference in the pre-meeting to the review we were working through years ago, I think it would be very useful to know the structure and the allocations. Our new leader has said that he's going to sort out the infrastructure, but we've seen that budget reducing year after year. There are a lot of issues. It's the highest profile issue, I think, for the council. And I think it would be really worth looking at. I personally would like to know what the structure of highways and superstructure is. I don't know about other members. I mean, Councillor Webb made reference to the gullies and such like, but it's all part of the big picture.
Yes, it's a good suggestion, but I think we need to actually focus on aspects of it, what we're particularly interested in, what we would like feedback on. You mentioned drains and gully clearing. I mean, if we're going to look at that.
Well, regrettably, Councillor, this chairman will put comments in, will make requests, and I referred to the black hole. I'm afraid I don't get responses back again, let alone action. So it will be interesting to know how many officers we actually have, whether we have an adequate department to do it, how effectively it's being run, and are we actually using money to the best effect? So anyway, it's your decision as chairman. Best of luck.
And all these points raised, if I can interrupt, please. Thank you, Val. All these and points raised are the residents' main concerns: bus shelters, gullies, and all these other. Yeah, they're the main things that we get complaints about. Absolutely. To be honest, aren't they? Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, but we need to know what subject we're going to be looking at. I don't know we can just sort of wade into the whole picture. We need to sort of say, be more specific. That's all I'm asking for.
Chairman, you see, as a long time serving member, I would have thought a request to several officers. Please can I have a diagram of the structure of the highways department? I get no response, let alone a diagram to show me who's who and what's what. So that's the end of it. As I say, and as Councillor Webb said, this is the big issue for the residents.
I mean, we could ask, I mean, what you're asking is actually like a directory of who does what and in particular departments. So, I mean, we can ask for that. I don't see that that's...
well, I'd appreciate a copy if you get it.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Stu.
We would like to raise the issue of a directory, I think. And this would cut across other select committees. A full directory of the various departments. Is that what I'm going to be asking for?
Yep.
Yes, it's something we had years ago.
Would that help with this particular?
I think Mr. Gaines
infrastructure,
still with us.
And we can look at that, and if there's something on that, we then a particular department we would like to, which comes under our remit, focus on and ask for specific information. For example, the schedule of clearing drains and gullies, which I think would be very useful to have. We could ask what happens with regard to the potholes. I mean, I report a pothole is repaired the next day. But what I'm saying is we start with a directory, and then if we want to be more specific, we can ask officers for various departments to come along and give us further information. Does that sound practical?
Thank you very much, Sharon.
Okay.
Yeah, well, fine. Yeah.
So we're putting a request from this committee for a copy of a directory of our whole authority structure.
Thank you.
As a recommendation from this committee, okay?
Yep.
Well done, Chairman.
Right. So The next step is the Council and Cabinet Forward Work Programme, which is for information. If there's anything on there that you feel we should be looking at prior to our next meeting, prior to being discussed at Cabinet and full Council, if there's anything at our next meeting we can look at. That's there for information. Often we pick things up that we think would be useful to come to select prior to it going to Cabinet and full Council. And then the date and time of the next meeting being the 29th of July. 2021.
Can I just say something, please, Chair? Thank you for excellent chairmanship this morning and for the excellent summing up with regard to the Welsh language and for the climate change item. Thank you so much.
Well, we are a team and I thank the whole team. Everybody's contributed. Hazel, Robert, all of the members and officers and Matthew Gatehouse, yes. And I keep saying about Mr. Gatehouse.
Yeah.
And Hazel, if she's still there, and Alan Burkitt, you've all been wonderful, and I appreciate everything that you've done for us today.
Chairman, could I ask you a question?
Yes, of course you can.
Could you ask Councillor Smith to telephone me, because I've been trying to get hold of her for weeks and I can't get
She's
her
having
anyway.
BT issues, I can tell you
Is
that
she?
now.
No, my phone is working, Chairman.
Oh,
the phone
Oh,
works.
it's not being answered, that's the problem.
Right,
Have a video call. Have a video call between
I
you.
should officially close the meeting on that note.
There's a message machine.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Chair.
Thanks everybody.
Thank
you.
See you soon.
Bye.